The vastness of the cosmos unfolds before our eyes, an ocean of starlight stretching endlessly into the black. The camera drifts through nebulae that pulse like breathing lungs, galaxies spiraling in slow, eternal motion. The narrator's voice pierces the silence, steady and curious, inviting the audience into a question older than existence itself. What is infinity? Humanity has always looked upward into that silent dome of stars, and felt something both terrifying and divine, the sense that beyond everything we can touch or measure, there lies a boundless realm without edges, without end. But what if infinity is not out there? What if it was never beyond us but within? What if, in some forgotten corner of reality, the infinite collapsed into one? The dawn of understanding was born from awe. Ancient humans, standing under the night sky, saw not numbers or equations, but eternity shimmering in darkness. They whispered to the stars, assigning them names, gods, and destinies. Infinity was the divine breath, the endless cycle of life and death. It was the horizon that always retreated as one walked toward it. The first philosophers, staring into the void, wondered whether the universe could ever stop, or if it had even begun. Every civilization carried a myth of creation, but beneath them all pulsed the same question. How can something come from nothing, and how can that something ever end? Infinity is a paradox disguised as beauty. The more we chase it, the further it slips away. Our minds, built to understand beginnings and endings, tremble before the infinite. It is not merely a number or concept. It is the collapse of comprehension itself. To imagine infinity is to step beyond logic into a realm where every answer births 1,000 new questions. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing the fall never ends. And yet, despite the terror, we are drawn to it as if something in us remembers being part of it. The story of infinity is not just about the cosmos. It is about us, the finite beings who dream of the infinite. Our lives are short, our memories fleeting, but our imagination knows no boundary. That contradiction defines the human condition. Creatures born in limitation, obsessed with the limitless. Every leap in science, every question in philosophy, every spark of art, all are echoes of a single longing to touch what cannot be reached, to make sense of what cannot be contained, to understand what lies beyond the horizon. As the visuals glide from galaxies to the neurons firing inside the human brain, the narration bridges the cosmic and the intimate. The same patterns appear in both, spirals, networks, clusters. The infinite reflected in the microscopic. We begin to see that perhaps the universe is not a place we observe, but a mirror reflecting ourselves. When we gaze into infinity, we are not just looking outward, but inward. Somewhere between stardust and consciousness, the boundary begins to blur. And so the question emerges, whispering through time. What happens when infinity itself begins to collapse? What if the endless expands so far that it folds back in on itself, creating a single, unified whole? The camera slows, focusing on one solitary point of light in the cosmic sea. A heartbeat. A beginning disguised as an ending. The voice lowers, almost reverent, as if revealing a secret. In the beginning, there was not everything, there was only one. The music swells, strings trembling on the edge of revelation. The screen fades to black, leaving only the echo of that thought, infinity collapsing into one, and the silence that follows, heavy with anticipation for what comes next. Before the first equations, before telescopes pierced the heavens, before language could even name the stars, there existed only wonder. The first humans stood beneath the night sky, eyes wide, hearts trembling, trying to make sense of the endless expanse above them. They saw no boundaries, no walls, no center, only an infinite vault of darkness shimmering with fire. To them, the stars were not distant suns but divine eyes watching over creation. The idea of infinity was not yet a concept. It was an emotion, a feeling of both insignificance and belonging, of awe and fear intertwined. This was the first dream of infinity, born in the silence between the heartbeat and the cosmos. In the deserts of ancient Egypt, priests watched the unending river of stars drift across the sky. The Nile rose and fell in perfect rhythm, mirroring the heavens. To the Egyptians this was no coincidence, it was the pulse of eternity. Time, to them, was circular. The sun died each evening only to be reborn at dawn. Life flowed into death, death into life in an endless cycle. They carved infinity into their myths, their gods embodying eternal return. Ra sailed across the sky by day, descended into the underworld by night, and emerged again with the dawn. Infinity was not frightening, it was sacred order. But even in their reverence, a question lingered. If everything repeats, does anything truly change? Across the sands, in ancient Mesopotamia, scribes etched their understanding of the cosmos onto clay tablets. Their gods ruled in cycles of creation and destruction, floods, fires, and rebirths. Infinity to them was chaos barely restrained by divine will. It was a storm that could not be tamed, only honored. Their mathematics, the first in history, hinted at continuity, at patterns that stretched beyond comprehension. Counting itself was an act of rebellion against the infinite, an attempt to name what could not be contained. Far to the east, in the cradle of the Indus and later in Vedic India, a different vision emerged. Infinity was not out there among the stars, it was within. The concept of Ananta, the endless serpent, wrapped itself around creation, symbolizing that which has no beginning or end. The Upanishads whispered that the self and the cosmos were one. From the infinite arises. Remove the infinite from the infinite, and the infinite remains. Here infinity was peace, not terror. It was the soul of existence, the breath of Brahman expanding and contracting forever. Life was not a journey toward infinity, but a realization that one had always been part of it. In the mountains of China, philosophers contemplated balance rather than boundlessness. The Tao was infinite not because it extended endlessly, but because it contained all opposites, yin and yang, light and shadow, movement and stillness. The Taoists understood that infinity did not mean size, it meant harmony. To them, the universe was complete in every moment. Infinity was not far away, it was present in the smallest ripple of water, the briefest breath of wind. Every finite thing carried the whole within it. In the jungles and islands of Mesoamerica, the Mayans and Aztecs saw time as an eternal wheel. The universe was born and destroyed in repeating cycles of suns. They believed we lived under the fifth sun, the previous four having perished in cataclysms. Each world's death was another's birth. Infinity again was circular, a dance of destruction and renewal. Their temples aligned perfectly with the stars, marking this endless rhythm of cosmic time. To them, infinity was neither hope nor despair, it was simply the way of things. From these distant corners of the world, a shared human pattern emerged. The infinite was never fully understood but always felt. Every civilization reached toward it in its own way, some through gods, some through geometry, some through silence. Infinity was both mirror and mystery. It promised immortality yet warned of dissolution. To think of it too deeply was to feel the ground of reason crumble. Still, our ancestors could not look away. They built monuments, drew circles in the sand, and told stories that never ended, as if their words might trap the untrappable. The narrator's tone darkens slightly as the film transitions from myth to mind. The question sharpens. Were these early dreams of infinity glimpses of truth, or illusions born of fear? The images shift. Spiraling petroglyphs fade into the swirling arms of galaxies, temple carvings dissolve into the orbits of planets. The human search for the infinite is shown as a continuous line, from the cave walls of prehistory to the chalkboards of modern physics. The music swells, layered with whispers and forgotten languages, as if the past is calling through time. Infinity has always existed at the edge of understanding. To define it is to destroy it, to reach for it is to fall into it. The first dreamers did not seek to master infinity, they sought to live with it. But as human reason evolved, that changed. The dream would soon become an obsession. Infinity, once sacred, would turn into a question that demanded proof. And in that pursuit, humanity would awaken something both magnificent and terrifying, the realization that the infinite might not be beyond the stars, but hidden in the logic of thought itself. The screen fades to darkness as the voice concludes, calm yet ominous. They named it eternal, unending, divine. But what they dreamed, we will soon attempt to measure. The sound of a heartbeat echoes, slow, resonant, infinite, as the next chapter begins, where mystery turns into mathematics. The dawn of philosophy brought with it a new kind of curiosity, one that no longer looked to the gods for answers, but to the mind itself. The infinite, once wrapped in myth and mysticism, began to shimmer in the realm of logic. In the marble courtyards of ancient Greece, beneath the sound of sandals scraping stone, the first thinkers began to wrestle with the paradox of the endless. They gazed not into the heavens this time, but into the nature of motion, number, and existence itself. What they discovered there would shake the foundations of reason, and centuries later still leave us standing at the edge of an unfathomable abyss. It began with Zeno of Elea, a quiet philosopher with a dangerous gift, the power to trap infinity inside words. His paradoxes were not riddles meant to amuse but weapons designed to fracture certainty. He proposed that motion, something so obvious it felt unquestionable, was, in truth, impossible. Imagine, he said, an arrow in flight. At any given instant it is still. And if time is made up of such instants, then motion cannot exist. Between any 2 points, there are infinite others, meaning the arrow must cross an infinite number of steps to reach its target. How then could it ever arrive? The camera lingers on the image of the arrow suspended in midair, time frozen around it. A heartbeat. The whisper of wind. The moment stretches into eternity. The voice of the narrator softens, almost hypnotic, as though describing a dream one cannot wake from. The paradox is simple yet devastating. Infinity, once a symbol of divine majesty, becomes a snare. It reveals that logic itself collapses when confronted by the endless. What appears continuous, motion, time, life, may in fact be an illusion stitched together by the mind. Other thinkers join the dance. Pythagoras, whose name would echo through the centuries, believed that numbers ruled the universe. He saw harmony and proportion in everything, from the notes of a lyre to the orbit of planets. But when his followers discovered something terrible, they tried to bury it in silence. The diagonal of a square, when measured, was irrational, an endless number that could not be written, could not be contained. The discovery shattered their belief in a perfect, numerical order. Infinity had crept into mathematics like a ghost, whispering that the universe could not be fully measured. Legend says the man who revealed the secret was drowned at sea, as though the infinite itself demanded sacrifice. The tone shifts, calm reason replaced by unease. The Greeks had long believed in cosmos, order, symmetry, knowability. But infinity represented chaos, a wound in reality that no intellect could heal. Aristotle, ever the rationalist, refused to accept it fully. He distinguished between potential infinity and actual infinity. The infinite could exist in thought, as an idea, a process, a limit never reached, but never in the world itself. You could divide a line forever in theory, but no actual infinite things could exist. To admit otherwise was to admit that reason had limits, and that was something Aristotle could not allow. The paradox of the endless became the mirror of human thought. Every attempt to define it revealed something more profound, that our logic, however elegant, was built upon boundaries we could not cross. To grasp infinity was to watch the structure of knowledge begin to unravel. The camera now moves through a visual metaphor, a library without walls, shelves receding into the horizon, books stacked infinitely high. The narrator's tone deepens. Each philosopher who entered this labyrinth of thought left changed, their certainty replaced by awe, sometimes despair. Plato imagined the world beyond appearances, a realm of perfect forms. To him, the finite world was but a shadow of the infinite. Yet even he hesitated before the question of whether the infinite truly existed or was merely the reflection of perfection in the human soul. The tension between the seen and unseen, the measurable and the boundless, defined an entire era of thought. It was as if the human mind had glimpsed the machinery behind reality, and recoiled. Mathematics and philosophy walked hand in hand toward the impossible. The early Greek geometers sought to measure the unmeasurable, to impose ratio upon the infinite curve. Euclid's geometry offered rules and boundaries, but between the lines and circles lingered something unresolved. Infinity always at the margins, like the horizon, visible but forever out of reach. The music swells, strings building tension as if reason itself is being stretched to its breaking point. The narrator's voice becomes more intimate, almost conspiratorial. Infinity, he says, was the first mirror in which humanity saw its own limits. Zeno's arrow still hangs in the air, suspended between logic and impossibility. It is not just motion that falters, it is meaning itself. As centuries passed, these paradoxes would ripple outward, shaping how we saw time, space, and even the soul. Infinity was no longer a comfort, it was a fracture line through knowledge. The ancient thinkers, in their quest to contain it, had instead opened a door that would never close. Their paradoxes survived empires, crossing into the language of scholars, poets, and physicists alike. Every age would return to them, seeking answers, and finding instead the same unsettling silence. The camera fades to black and then to the slow turning of the Earth seen from space. The voice returns, calm once more. We began by asking how far the arrow must travel, it says. But perhaps the greater question is, who is watching it move? Infinity had revealed something profound, not only about the universe but about perception itself. To confront the endless was to confront consciousness, to glimpse the infinite observer within the finite mind. The scene ends with the faint sound of the arrow being released, slicing through air that never seems to end. The image freezes before it hits its target. The voice, now barely a whisper, the arrow never moves. Yet somehow, it always arrives. The paradox remains unsolved, suspended between truth and illusion, as the screen fades once again into darkness. The echo of the infinite lingers, both haunting and beautiful, reminding us that understanding has boundaries but wonder does not. The story of infinity entered a new chapter not in temples or marble halls, but on paper, in the quiet rooms of mathematicians who dared to write symbols that defied the imagination. The quest that began with Zeno's frozen arrow and Plato's invisible forms was about to evolve into something far more radical. Infinity was no longer a myth or a paradox. It became a problem to be solved, measured, and named. The minds who attempted this would open doors into a world where numbers stretched forever, a world that felt more divine than rational. And at the center of it all stood one man whose discoveries would both illuminate and torment him, George Cantor. The 19th century was an age of confidence. Science seemed to have conquered mystery, the world appeared measurable, predictable, knowable. Telescopes saw deeper into space, microscopes into the cell, and mathematics into the laws that governed both. Yet hidden within the neat equations of this new rational universe was a sleeping giant, the infinite, silent, and unsolved. Mathematicians had long avoided it, treating it as Aristotle once did, a potential, never an actuality. But Cantor refused to look away. To him, infinity was not a philosophical riddle but a landscape waiting to be mapped. He wanted to measure the immeasurable. The camera moves through an imagined study, papers scattered, candlelight flickering, chalk dust hanging like mist. Cantor's handwriting covers the walls, symbols intertwining like constellations. His mind was consumed by the question that haunted all of mathematics. Could infinity come in different sizes? Could one infinity be larger than another? The question seemed absurd, yet within its impossibility lay the key to understanding everything, from numbers to reality itself. He began with sets, collections of things as simple as counting apples or stars. But when he tried to count the uncountable, strange patterns emerged. The set of all whole numbers, 1, 2, 3 and so on, was infinite. Yet when he compared it to the set of all even numbers, something shocking appeared. There were just as many even numbers as all numbers combined. Infinity equaled infinity no matter how much you took away. The logic twisted itself into knots, yet somehow, it held. Cantor called these countable infinities. Then came the revelation that would change mathematics forever. He compared the set of whole numbers to the set of real numbers, all decimals, all fractions, all values between 0 and 1. Using an ingenious diagonal argument, he proved that no matter how you tried to list them, there would always be more real numbers than integers. This was not just infinite, it was a higher infinity. Cantor had discovered a hierarchy of infinities, a tower of endlessness rising beyond comprehension. There was not one infinite, but many, each greater than the last, stretching upward without end. The narration slows, reverent. For the first time, it says, the infinite had been dissected by human reason. Cantor's discovery was like splitting light into its unseen colors. Infinity was no longer a single vast void, it was a structure, an architecture of the eternal. Mathematicians should have celebrated. Instead they recoiled. Many of Cantor's peers saw his ideas as blasphemy. To define infinity was to trespass on divine ground. The great mathematician Leopold Kronecker, once Cantor's mentor, denounced him as a heretic. God made the integers. All else is the work of man. Others whispered that Cantor had gone mad, and in truth, he was haunted by his own revelations. His journals reveal a man torn between ecstasy and despair, between faith and reason. He believed his work was guided by the divine, that he had glimpsed God's mathematics, yet he also feared that by naming infinity he had broken something sacred. The film lingers on Cantor's face, eyes dark, tired, yet burning with obsession. His voice, read softly by an actor, murmurs lines from his letters. The essence of mathematics lies precisely in its freedom. The narrator responds, but freedom, when stretched too far, begins to resemble chaos. Cantor's infinities multiplied like stars, expanding faster than thought itself. Soon, other mathematicians began to sense a terrifying question forming at the edge of his work. If infinities can be compared, if there is an infinite beyond infinity, then what anchors reality at all? The visuals shift. Numbers transforming into galaxies, sets spiraling into fractals, the boundary between abstraction and existence dissolving. Infinity, once tamed, begins to turn feral again. What was supposed to be the triumph of logic becomes a descent into madness and mystery. Cantor's health deteriorated. He suffered breakdowns, hospitalized again and again. The infinite that he had tried to define now consumed him from within. And yet, his discoveries would not die. Long after his death, his work would ignite new revolutions, in logic, in cosmology, in computer science. His hierarchy of infinities became the scaffolding upon which modern mathematics was built. Even his idea of infinity as a real, living structure echoes in the language of physics, where spacetime curves and dimensions multiply beyond visibility. Cantor's tragedy was that he reached too far, too soon, a mortal mind touching the machinery of eternity. The music softens, a single violin echoing like thought itself. The narrator concludes, infinity, once feared as chaos, had been given form. But form does not mean control. The scene cuts from Cantor's study to a vast cosmic field, numbers dissolving into stars. The mathematician's mirage, the voice continues, is the belief that by naming something we own it. But the infinite remains unowned, and in its reflection, we see the limits of reason, and the fragility of the mind that dreams beyond them. The final image returns to the candle on Cantor's desk. Its flame flickers and divides, one light becoming two, two becoming four, until the screen fills with infinite glimmers, like stars multiplying in the void. The flame extinguishes. Silence. The infinite recedes, patient, waiting for the next mind brave enough to chase it again. Long before equations described the heavens, before quantum fields or singularities, the idea of infinity had already been claimed by the divine. It was woven into prayers, painted in temples, sung through cathedrals. To ancient theologians, infinity was not an abstraction, it was God himself. The eternal, the omnipresent, the unending. Humanity had always sensed that behind the fragile world of forms lay something without limit, a perfection too vast to name. Yet as our understanding deepened, so did the tension. If infinity belonged to God, could humanity ever truly touch it? Or was every attempt to grasp the infinite an act of spiritual trespass? The screen opens to a vast cathedral bathed in golden light. Voices echo in sacred harmonies. Candles flicker like galaxies scattered across marble floors. The narrator begins, before science measured the cosmos, faith gave it meaning. The camera moves slowly through arches and stained glass, where light divides into infinite colors, a visual metaphor for the divine made visible. From Christianity to Islam, from Hinduism to Sufism, the infinite was more than a number, it was the essence of existence. In early Christian thought, infinity was a symbol of God's perfection. St. Augustine pondered the eternal nature of the Creator, unchanging, omnipotent, beyond time. He wrote that time itself began with creation, that before the universe there was no before. God existed in an infinite present. To contemplate him was to confront something without origin or end. For Augustine, the mind could not grasp such magnitude, yet the soul could feel it, a flicker of the divine infinity burning within finite flesh. Centuries later, Thomas Aquinas would refine this vision. He argued that only God was truly infinite, all else was limited by its nature. Creation, no matter how vast, could never equal its source. Infinity, therefore, was the dividing line between creator and created, a barrier both sacred and terrifying. The closer one approached it, the smaller the self became. The narrator's voice softens, infinity was the mirror in which humanity saw its own mortality. But not all saw the infinite as separation. In Eastern mysticism, the infinite was not a distant deity, but the ground of being itself. The Upanishad spoke of Brahman, pure consciousness without limit, within which all worlds arise and dissolve. From the infinite arises, they said. Take the infinite from the infinite, and the infinite remains. The imagery shifts, from cathedrals to the quiet flow of the Ganges, from stained glass to the endless sky reflected in still water. The divine infinite was not external but immanent, the pulse of existence in every atom, every thought. Sufi poets sang of the same mystery through the language of love. Rumi wrote, "The drop is not different from the ocean." To them, infinity was not a number or a throne, but an experience, the moment the self dissolves into the one. In their vision, the infinite was not cold or remote, it was intimate, burning with desire and unity. The narrator whispers, to lose oneself in God was not death, it was expansion. Yet this union came with danger. The boundaries between divinity and humanity were not easily crossed. Mystics who claimed oneness with the infinite often faced persecution. Al-Hallaj, a Sufi master, was executed after proclaiming, Ana al-Haq, I am the truth, the same divine name used for God. His words were both revelation and blasphemy, a collision of the finite with the infinite. His death became a symbol of what happens when the human mind reaches too far into eternity. As theology evolved, so did its contradictions. The more philosophers tried to define the infinite, the more it escaped them. Could an infinite being know everything, even the limits of its own knowledge? Could something infinite create the finite without diminishing itself? Medieval scholars debated these questions endlessly, trying to reconcile logic with faith. Infinity became both proof of God's perfection and evidence of human ignorance. The Renaissance shifted the focus outward, from heaven to the cosmos. Giordano Bruno, inspired by both faith and reason, declared that the universe itself was infinite and that every star was a sun surrounded by worlds. He believed the divine infinite expressed itself through endless creation. For this vision he was burned alive in Rome. The narrator speaks over flickering flames. In Bruno's fire, the infinite revealed its cost. To believe in boundlessness was to threaten those who depended on walls. As centuries passed, the divine infinite began to merge with the scientific. Newton described absolute space and time as the sensorium of God, an infinite field through which he perceived creation. But with every equation, divinity retreated a little further from the center. The more we understood the universe in material terms, the less room was left for mystery. Infinity remained, but stripped of holiness, it became a concept, a number, a void. What had once been sacred was now theoretical. Still, the echo of the divine infinite lingered. Even today, when cosmologists speak of the multiverse or eternal inflation, their language borders on the mystical. Every attempt to describe totality feels like prayer disguised as mathematics. The screen now shows deep space, galaxies blooming like stained glass windows, the cosmic background radiation humming like an invisible choir. The voice returns, we no longer call it God. But the longing remains the same, to touch the boundless, to see the face behind the stars. The tone shifts, contemplative yet uneasy. The narrator reflects, perhaps what we call God and what we call infinity are two words for the same ache, the need to know that nothing is ever truly lost. The visuals fade between a monk meditating, a physicist scribbling equations, a child staring up at the night sky. All are seekers of the same thing. All are tracing the outline of the infinite. The music swells, neither sacred nor scientific, a harmony of both. The final lines carry a soft gravity. Infinity was never just a number. It was a promise, a warning, a mirror. It told us that beyond every answer lies a greater question, and beyond every truth, a mystery that refuses to end. The light from a candle merges into the light of a distant star, the two indistinguishable. The infinite has collapsed once again into the heart of the observer. The story of infinity does not end in the mind of mathematicians or the hearts of mystics. It spills outward into the very fabric of the cosmos. The stars, the void between them, the breath of galaxies spiraling through space, all of it speaks the language of the infinite. Yet what if the universe itself, vast beyond comprehension, is not truly endless? What if infinity in its grandest form is an illusion, a circle so immense that its edge meets its beginning? This is the paradox that modern cosmology inherited. A universe both finite and unbounded, infinite in appearance, yet closed upon itself like the curve of a single, perfect breath. The scene opens with silence. Then, slowly, the hum of cosmic radiation fills the void, soft, ancient, eternal. The camera drifts across a sea of galaxies, each one a swirl of light in the ocean of time. The universe, the narrator begins, was not born in infinity. It was born in collapse. In an instant smaller than a heartbeat, all matter, all energy, all potential was compressed into one, an infinitesimal point of impossible density and heat. Then came the release, the expansion we call the Big Bang. Infinity was not before creation, it was creation itself, the unfolding of the finite into the illusion of endlessness. The Big Bang was not an explosion in space, it was the birth of space itself. Every atom, every galaxy, every breath of air still carries the echo of that first expansion. The universe has been stretching ever since, its fabric thinning, stars drifting farther apart. Yet in its expansion lies a riddle that even the greatest minds struggle to answer. Will it go on forever, or will it fold back into itself? Is the cosmos infinite in extent, or simply so vast that the human mind mistakes its curve for boundlessness? The visuals shift, showing rippling grids that warp into spheres, a metaphor for Einstein's insight. His theory of general relativity replaced the mechanical clockwork of Newton with something far stranger. A universe where space and time are not separate, but one continuous field. Gravity is no longer a force but the bending of that field. And if space can bend, it can also wrap around. Einstein showed us, the narrator says, that the universe could be both finite and without edge, like the surface of a sphere, endless in its looping, yet complete in itself. Infinity, in this view, is an illusion of perspective, born from standing inside the curve and never seeing the whole. But humanity is restless. The more we learn, the less content we are with illusion. Astronomers measured the cosmic background radiation, that faint afterglow of the Big Bang, and found that the universe seems flat, its geometry stretching outward without end. Yet even flat may be a trick of scale. On the grandest level, space could still be folded, its edges touching in ways our eyes can never trace. The narrator poses the question like a whisper in the void: if we could travel far enough, would we return to where we began? The film slows to a meditative rhythm, showing galaxies colliding, stars being born and dying, black holes devouring light. Each scene mirrors the breath of the cosmos: expansion and contraction, creation and collapse. Ancient myths spoke of this rhythm long before science could measure it. Hindu cosmology described the universe as the inhalation and exhalation of Brahma, an infinite cycle of birth and dissolution. The physicist's equations and the mystic's breath now echo each other, both pointing toward a truth that neither language can fully contain. Infinity, then, is not a destination but a rhythm, a pulse within existence. From the oscillating loops of string theory to the cyclical models of cosmic time, every modern theory seems to whisper the same thing: that perhaps the infinite is not beyond reach because it was never separate. It is the movement itself, the constant becoming. The narrator's tone deepens. Every breath we take mirrors the cosmos, he says. Each inhale, creation. Each exhale, return. The camera zooms into the human lung, where alveoli expand and contract like tiny universes. Then outward again to galaxies swirling in slow motion. The patterns are identical. It is as though infinity has encoded itself into the rhythm of life, repeating the same geometry from the microscopic to the cosmic. But there is a darker side to this beauty. If the universe expands without end, all stars will one day burn out. The night sky will grow empty. Galaxies will drift so far apart that their light will never meet another. This heat death of the cosmos is not fire but silence, an infinite stillness where even time loses meaning. The music fades to near silence. If the infinite continues, the voice whispers, nothing will remain to witness it. Yet some theories defy despair. Perhaps the universe will not fade into eternal darkness but collapse back into itself. A big crunch, where infinity folds inward, compressing into unity once more. Others speak of cosmic rebirth, where that collapse triggers another explosion, another beginning. The universe may be breathing even now, its cycle stretching across unimaginable eons. Infinity once again reveals itself not as endlessness, but as recurrence. The tone shifts from solemn to transcendent. The visuals move through pulsating nebulae, a cosmic symphony of color and motion. The cosmos, the narrator concludes, is not a place, it is a story. A story written in expansion and return, in light and shadow. Infinity is the language of that story, not its shape. The camera pulls back farther and farther until the galaxies themselves resemble neurons in a cosmic brain, flickering with the thought of creation. And then a whisper, half question, half revelation: if the universe breathes, what breathes it? The image fades into darkness, leaving only a single pulse of light, like a heartbeat suspended in eternity. The sound of that cosmic breath echoes, slow and steady, as if the universe itself were alive, waiting to inhale once more. For centuries, the human mind had gazed at the stars with certainty, confident that the universe obeyed laws as elegant as they were eternal. But then, somewhere in the middle of the 20th century, a quiet tremor began to shake the foundations of that certainty. It started not in an explosion or a revelation, but in the calm precision of equations, Einstein's equations, the very ones that were meant to describe reality itself. What those equations revealed was something so haunting, so profound, that even their creator refused to believe them. The story of when the equations broke is the story of when the universe stopped making sense. The camera opens on Einstein's study. Chalk dust swirls in the late afternoon light. Pages covered in strange curves and symbols litter the desk. At first, the narrator begins, it was beauty. Pure, perfect symmetry. General relativity had united space and time into a single fabric, space-time, that bent and curved under the weight of matter. It was a triumph of reason, a vision of the cosmos as an elegant geometry where gravity was not a force, but the shape of reality itself. Yet even perfection hides cracks. In the quiet spaces between the equations, infinity began to whisper again. Einstein's equations were precise, perhaps too precise. When applied to certain conditions, they predicted something that should not exist: singularities. Points where curvature, density, and gravity all became infinite. In such places, the equations did not merely fail to describe reality, they collapsed entirely. Infinity, the narrator says softly, had returned not as philosophy or faith, but as mathematics screaming that it could no longer hold the universe together. At first, Einstein refused to accept it. The universe, he believed, must be stable and eternal, not collapsing, not exploding, not ending. He introduced a cosmological constant into his equations, a mathematical patch meant to hold the cosmos still, to keep infinity at bay. But nature would not be tamed. When Edwin Hubble's telescope revealed that galaxies were racing away from each other, that space itself was expanding, Einstein quietly called his constant, "the greatest blunder of my life." The infinite had won. The universe was not static. It was in motion, alive, stretching outward like a breath with no end in sight. Yet within that motion, something darker was waiting. Mathematicians and physicists, inspired by Einstein's equations, began to follow them into their deepest consequences. Karl Schwarzschild, solving them while stationed on the front lines of World War I, discovered a strange possibility, a point of such intense gravity that not even light could escape. A black sphere in space, invisible, absolute, infinite. The first theoretical black hole. The war ended, but the idea did not. Infinity had taken a new form, not as a concept or a god, but as a wound in spacetime itself. The visuals grow surreal, light bending, time slowing, stars spiraling into invisible mouths of darkness. The narrator's tone becomes hushed, reverent. Einstein's masterpiece had revealed its own undoing. Within its logic was a place where logic died. These singularities were not edges of space, but collapses of meaning. Inside them, density becomes infinite, time ceases to exist, and every law that governs reality dissolves. For decades, physicists avoided the problem. Some called singularities mere mathematical artifacts, mistakes produced by pushing equations too far. But in the 1960s, two young scientists, Roger Penrose and Stephen Hawking, proved otherwise. Their theorems showed that singularities were not exceptions. They were inevitable. If gravity could act freely, if space could bend and matter could fall, then somewhere, somehow, the universe must contain a place where everything collapses into one. The equations, the narrator says, did not break by accident. They broke because the infinite was real. The screen fills with imagery, swirling galaxies, collapsing stars, and diagrams of spacetime curving inward like fabric pulled into a drain. The narration slows, the tone somber yet awe-filled. At the center of a black hole, it continues, our mathematics falls silent. Our physics ends. Beyond that horizon lies not darkness, but ignorance. The infinite had become not a number but a boundary, a place where human understanding stopped. Einstein himself never accepted black holes. They offended his sense of harmony. He could not believe that nature would allow such monstrous violations of order. Yet time would prove otherwise. Observations of collapsing stars, X-ray emissions, and the movements of galaxies revealed their undeniable presence. Infinity was not an illusion of mathematics, it was out there, stitched into the sky. The very equations that had promised completeness now whispered that the universe contained its own undoing. The music rises, tense and haunting, as the narrator speaks. Every advance in science brings us closer to truth, and closer to the point where truth fractures. The camera moves through a simulation of spacetime collapsing into a singularity. Light stretches into red, time slows to stillness. When the equations broke, the voice says, it was not the end of understanding. It was the beginning of mystery. And so, infinity returned not as a dream of gods or philosophers, but as a physical reality, a place that could be seen, measured, and yet never entered. The infinite no longer lived in thought, it was out there, waiting in the heart of every dying star. The narrator's voice softens. We had sought to make sense of the universe, he says, but the universe answered in paradox. The film ends with a long, silent shot of a black hole's event horizon, a perfect circle of shadow surrounded by fire. The music fades into a low hum, like the sound of deep breath echoing through eternity. In the beginning, the narrator whispers, the infinite collapsed to create the finite. But in the heart of every black hole, the finite collapses back into infinity. A final pause, vast, wordless, humbling. The equations that once promised certainty now glow faintly on a blackboard, half erased, unfinished. The voice returns one last time, quiet but unyielding. When the equations broke, they did not fail us. They revealed what no equation could contain, that truth itself has a horizon. Silence. The kind that feels alive, heavy, eternal. Then a faint sound, low and deep, the hum of spacetime itself. The screen is black, yet something stirs within it, a ripple, a pulse. Slowly, light begins to bend, swirling in circles, pulled into a whirlpool that devours itself. The narrator's voice emerges, calm and resonant, almost a whisper. At the edge of the known universe, there exists a place where infinity collapses into one. It has no surface, no substance, no sound, only hunger. It is the point where all journeys end. The place where everything that once was becomes nothing. This is the singularity. This is the place where the universe speaks. The image resolves into the now iconic black hole, a perfect circle of darkness surrounded by a ring of burning light. The camera moves closer as if falling. The singularity, the narrator continues, is not a thing. It is an absence. A point where gravity grows infinite and space folds in upon itself. It is where time itself stops. Every word lands like a heartbeat. The light around the black hole begins to stretch and distort, the familiar laws of physics unraveling in slow motion. We once thought the infinite was unreachable, the voice says. But here it waits for us, in the heart of a dying star. The story of the singularity begins in death. A star, massive and radiant, burns through its fuel, fighting against its own gravity. For billions of years it resists, fusing hydrogen into heavier elements, creating the building blocks of planets, life and thought. But one day it runs out of light. Gravity, the invisible sculptor of the cosmos, claims its victory. The star collapses inward, faster and faster, its atoms crushed beyond comprehension. The more it collapses, the stronger gravity becomes, until the process feeds upon itself. Then, in a flash that outshines galaxies, the outer layers explode in a supernova, leaving behind a remnant that no force can resist. The light dies, but the darkness remains. The narrator's tone shifts from scientific to poetic, describing the transformation as though it were a ritual. A star becomes a prayer folded into darkness, he says. Matter gives up its shape, its name, its meaning. The infinite does not destroy it, it consumes it into unity. The camera dives closer, past the fiery accretion disk, into the event horizon, the point of no return. Time slows. Light bends backward. Every frame elongates into eternity. To an observer, the narrator explains, the star never truly falls. It freezes at the edge of forever, its final scream stretched across infinite time. Inside, however, reality changes form. No human eye has ever seen beyond the event horizon, but mathematics paints a terrifying picture. Space and time swap roles, movement becomes destiny. Everything that crosses the threshold is drawn inward, not by choice but by the nature of existence itself. Distances shrink. Energy becomes density. Density becomes infinity. The singularity, the narrator says, is the universe remembering how it began, everything collapsing back into the one from which it came. The visuals become abstract, swirling equations, fragments of light collapsing into darkness, sound fading into a low pulse. What lies beyond the singularity? The voice asks. Some say it is the end of all information. Others say it is a bridge, a doorway to another universe. A place where what falls is reborn in another reality. The music swells, ethereal and haunting, echoing the question rather than answering it. The idea of a wormhole flashes briefly on screen, a tunnel connecting two infinities through one impossible point. Perhaps, the narrator muses, the singularity does not destroy. Perhaps it transforms. Scientists and philosophers alike have tried to understand it, but language itself begins to fracture. Equations become poetry, numbers lose meaning. The singularity is the ultimate paradox. It is where everything becomes one, yet in doing so becomes nothing. It is the collapse of difference, the death of duality. In the heart of that darkness there is no time, no space, no observer, and yet, perhaps, there is still being. The narrator's voice softens, almost reverent. If the infinite collapses into one and the one is all that remains, then what is that one if not the echo of consciousness itself? The film now transitions into a breathtaking sequence, the camera moving through the black hole as though passing through a mirror. Light inverts. Shadows glow. The universe folds upon itself in fractal symmetry. The narration grows slower, dreamlike. Some physicists suggest that everything we see, every star, every atom, every thought, may have originated from a singularity. That we are, in a sense, the inside of another black hole, expanding outward from another collapse. Infinity reborn within infinity. The scene cuts to a human eye reflecting the cosmos. The narrator continues, "When we look into a black hole, we are not just observing the death of a star. We are watching the beginning of everything. For what is the Big Bang if not a singularity turned inside out?" The connection between birth and destruction, creation and collapse becomes clear. The two are one motion, one breath. The camera pulls back, revealing the mirrored structure of the universe itself, a cosmic mandala where every collapse births a new beginning. And yet, even with all our theories and telescopes, the singularity remains untouchable. It is the silent center of reality, the limit of reason, the mystery that endures beyond all equations. The narrator concludes with a tone both awed and mournful. "We have measured its shadow but never its heart. We have traced its edges but never crossed its threshold. The singularity does not hide from us. It simply reminds us that some truths are not meant to be contained." The final shot lingers on the black circle, perfectly still, surrounded by a storm of light. The music fades into silence. When infinity collapses into one, the narrator whispers, it does not vanish. It becomes the seed of every universe yet to come. The circle slowly fades to white, and the screen dissolves into a single point of light, quiet, unending, and alive. For centuries, science had worshipped order, the idea that the universe followed predictable laws, that every cause produced a measurable effect, and that nature could be written in the language of mathematics. But in the 20th century, that faith began to tremble. Deep beneath the scale of the visible world, in the realm of the infinitesimal, reality started to rebel. The universe, once thought to be a grand machine, revealed itself to be something far stranger. Uncertain, unstable, alive with probability. This rebellion had a name, quantum mechanics, and it would forever change our understanding of infinity. The scene opens in complete silence. Then, a single particle drifts across the screen, glowing, flickering, existing in two places at once. The narrator's voice enters, slow and deliberate. In the smallest spaces of reality, the infinite does not stretch outward, it folds inward. Infinity hides within the atom, in places so small they cannot be seen, only imagined. The camera zooms deeper, passing through the walls of the particle until even space itself begins to dissolve. At the dawn of the 20th century, scientists believed the atom was a solid, indivisible sphere, the end of all division. But experiments soon shattered that certainty. When electrons were fired through thin sheets of metal, they behaved not like solid bullets but like ripples in a pond. Matter was not fixed, it was fluid. Energy and particles blurred together in a dance of duality. It was as if nature refused to choose between being something and being everything. The quantum world was a place of contradictions. The double-slit experiment, perhaps the most famous of them all, revealed an impossible truth. When particles of light, photons, were sent through two openings, they produced a wave pattern, as if each photon had gone through both slits simultaneously. But when scientists tried to observe which slit the photon actually passed through, the wave collapsed. The photon behaved like a single particle again. The very act of watching changed the outcome. In this tiny universe, the narrator says, reality does not exist until it is seen. The visuals become surreal, waves rippling, collapsing into dots, then rippling again. Observation, the voice continues, creates the world. In that moment, the infinite took a new form. It was no longer only the vastness of the cosmos, but the endless potential hidden within every quantum state. Between what is and what could be lies a gulf as deep as infinity itself. Physicists like Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg tried to make sense of this impossible reality. They discovered that the smaller one looks, the less certain things become. Heisenberg formulated his uncertainty principle. One cannot know both the position and the momentum of a particle with absolute precision. The closer we come to knowing one, the more the other slips away. The narrator's voice carries quiet wonder. Nature hides behind uncertainty, not because it is chaotic, but because it is infinite in possibility. Einstein, whose equations had revealed the curvature of space and time, could not accept this rebellion. God does not play dice, he protested. To him, the universe had to be orderly, deterministic, governed by cause and effect. But quantum theory refused his authority. The dice, it seemed, were not only being thrown, they were made of probability itself. The imagery now accelerates. Subatomic particles collide, flash, and vanish. Equations appear and dissolve, replaced by waves of color and light. The quantum world, the narrator says, is not random. It is rich. It is alive. Beneath the surface of what we call matter lies a storm of invisible infinities, every particle, every field, vibrating across dimensions we can barely imagine. Then a pause. The voice softens. But this infinity is not the kind we knew before. It does not stretch forever in space. It exists in layers, probabilities stacked upon probabilities. Reality is not one thing, but a superposition of all things, collapsing only when we look. The screen shows countless overlapping versions of a single atom, each shimmering in and out of existence. Every possibility exists, the narrator continues, but only one becomes real, the one we witness. This idea, that observation shapes reality, introduced a terrifying intimacy between mind and universe. If the observer affects the observed, then consciousness itself is entangled with existence. The boundary between physics and philosophy began to blur. What if, in some deep sense, we are part of the equation? What if reality needs us to exist? The music shifts to a faster rhythm, mirroring the chaos of subatomic motion. The narrator describes how quantum mechanics shattered the final illusions of control. Determinism gave way to chance, certainty to mystery. Infinity no longer lay in the stars but in the gaps between moments, in the flicker of potential that never fully resolves. The microscopic and the cosmic were revealed to be reflections of the same paradox, both governed by uncertainty, both haunted by the infinite. As the 20th century unfolded, new interpretations arose. Hugh Everett's many worlds theory proposed that every quantum possibility actually occurs, not as a collapse but as a branching. With every event, reality splits into countless parallel universes. Somewhere, another you reads these words under a different sky. The infinite, once distant, now multiplied within itself. Perhaps, the narrator muses, the infinite does not stretch outward at all. Perhaps it branches inward forever. The visuals expand, branching timelines, mirrored worlds, endless versions of Earth orbiting endless suns. Quantum mechanics, the voice continues, does not destroy meaning. It multiplies it. The universe is no longer one story but all stories happening at once. Each possibility realized, each choice echoing across dimensions. Infinity, once feared, becomes the very structure of existence. The final sequence slows again. The camera drifts through a vast lattice of light, a simulation of the quantum field. Tiny ripples shimmer like waves on an unseen ocean. In the end, the narrator says, we discovered that uncertainty is not the failure of knowledge. It is the foundation of being. What we call randomness is the breath of creation itself. The image zooms out, from the trembling atoms of a single cell to galaxies spiraling through space. The infinite above, the voice concludes, and the infinite below, are one and the same. Each particle is a mirror of the cosmos, each thought an echo of the quantum storm. We are not separate from it. We are part of the uncertainty, living expressions of the infinite collapse between possibility and presence. The final frame shows a single photon pulsing in the dark, half wave, half particle, flickering between existence and non-existence. A heartbeat of creation itself. The universe, the narrator whispers, is not certain, and that is its greatest truth. There comes a moment in every age when the human mind confronts the edge of its own design, a silent realization that knowledge, no matter how vast, cannot contain everything. The 20th century was one of triumph. Relativity mapped the cosmic. Quantum theory unveiled the microscopic. But beneath the brilliance something began to break. The certainty that once held science, philosophy, and reason together started to dissolve. Truth itself became slippery, fragmented, uncertain. What had once been the pursuit of perfect understanding now faced a new revelation, that the closer we came to knowing everything, the more we exposed the infinity of what could never be known. This was the death of certainty. The screen fades in from darkness, showing archival footage of bustling cities, rockets launching, computer lights flickering, humanity at the peak of discovery. The narrator begins, for centuries we believed that truth was a structure, solid, timeless, unbreakable. But the more we built upon it, the more we realized that the foundation itself was trembling. The tone is reflective, almost mournful. The camera pans across human inventions, telescopes, accelerators, satellites, all tools built to pierce the infinite. We sought to master the cosmos, the voice continues, but in doing so we found that the cosmos cannot be mastered. It shifts each time we look. Einstein, Bohr, Heisenberg, Gödel, Schrödinger, each of them pulled another thread from the tapestry of certainty. Gödel's incompleteness theorems proved that even within mathematics, the purest realm of logic, there exist truths that can never be proven. Infinity had infiltrated the very core of reason. Even numbers, the narrator says, could not escape mystery. The idea was staggering, that within every system of knowledge, there will always be questions that cannot be answered from within. Knowledge, it seemed, contained its own boundaries. Logic, too, was mortal. This realization did not remain confined to mathematics. It spread into physics, art, and philosophy. Quantum mechanics shattered determinism. Relativity destroyed the idea of absolute time. Even psychology began to reveal the chaos within human perception. We discovered, the narrator says, that we do not see reality as it is. We see it as we are. The infinite now looked back through our own eyes, a reflection of mind and cosmos collapsing into each other. The music swells, a haunting piano echoing under strings, as the narration continues. The death of certainty was not an event. It was a slow unraveling. A whisper that began in equations and grew into a roar that reached every corner of thought. Philosophers like Nietzsche and Kierkegaard had already sensed it. The old pillars of meaning, God, truth, order, were cracking. The scientific age had promised clarity, but in its deepest discoveries, it had found only more questions. The visuals shift to an abstract montage. Galaxies spinning, numbers cascading, and mirrors reflecting mirrors. Infinity, the narrator murmurs, does not answer, it reveals. To face the infinite is to lose the comfort of boundaries, to admit that truth is not a straight line, but an expanding wave. The narrator pauses, allowing silence to stretch, as if inviting the audience to feel the weight of uncertainty itself. Still, within that uncertainty there was beauty. We began to see, the voice continues, that the death of certainty was not the death of meaning, but the birth of humility. The greatest minds began to accept not knowing as a form of wisdom. Einstein himself confessed that the more he learned, the more mysterious the universe became. Niels Bohr said that anyone not shocked by quantum theory did not truly understand it. To understand the infinite was to surrender the illusion of control. The camera shifts from equations to human faces. Artists painting, dancers moving, poets writing. The tone grows warmer, more intimate. When reason faltered, the narrator says, imagination took its place. The collapse of absolute knowledge opened the door to creative truth, to art, to intuition, to the idea that meaning might not be found in certainty but in connection. The infinite had returned to where it began, the human heart. And yet the fear remained. For some, the death of certainty felt like the death of purpose. If nothing was absolute, what could guide us? The 20th century bore witness to both enlightenment and despair, to breakthroughs in science and the horrors of war. The same intellect that split the atom also split morality. Knowledge without certainty, the narrator warns, can illuminate or destroy. The difference lies only in how we see ourselves within it. The visuals grow darker, flashes of mushroom clouds, burning cities, and then the serene image of Earth rising over the moon. The infinite, the voice says, is neither kind nor cruel. It simply is. Humanity's challenge was no longer to conquer the unknown, but to live meaningfully within it. The narration softens, contemplative. The death of certainty was the beginning of awareness. The moment we stopped pretending we understood the universe, we began to truly see it. The imagery now turns gentle. Children looking through telescopes, raindrops on glass, neurons firing like stars. The music returns to calm harmony. We are not smaller for not knowing everything, the narrator continues. We are greater for recognizing how much remains unknown. As the section nears its close, the tone turns hopeful, quiet but luminous. To live after certainty, the voice says, is to live in wonder. To see truth not as a destination, but as a horizon that always recedes, not because it hides but because it invites us to keep moving. The infinite, once feared as chaos, becomes a kind of grace. The camera pulls back slowly, showing Earth from space, a glowing blue sphere suspended in darkness. Perhaps, the narrator concludes, the purpose of knowledge was never to conquer mystery but to keep it alive. Perhaps the infinite does not end our search, it sustains it. The final image lingers, our small planet turning silently in the cosmic sea, fragile yet luminous, finite yet surrounded by eternity. Then, softly, the final line, the death of certainty was not the end of truth. It was the moment truth began to breathe. The infinite has always worn many faces. Once it was divine, later mathematical, then cosmic. But in our time, the age of algorithms and information, it has taken on a new mask, the digital. We no longer gaze into the night sky to confront infinity. We scroll, we click, we stream. We stare into luminous screens that stretch endlessly, feeding us a torrent of data that has no center, no boundary, no silence. This is the illusion of continuity, a new kind of infinite born not from the stars, but but from the circuits of our own creation. The screen fades in from darkness to an ocean of light, billions of data points flowing like constellations across the void. The narrator's voice begins softly, almost whispering, "Once, we sought infinity beyond the world. Now we build it within our machines." The camera zooms into a digital landscape that looks eerily like the cosmos. Networks branching like galaxies, lines of code drifting like starlight. "We used to dream of reaching the stars," the voice continues. "Now we have created a mirror that reflects infinity back at us, pixel by pixel, bit by bit." The birth of the digital age was not simply technological, it was philosophical. When information could be copied perfectly, infinitely, and distributed instantly, the very notion of boundaries began to dissolve. A photograph, a word, a memory, all could be duplicated without decay. Time itself seemed to flatten. In the analog world, the narrator says, things aged. In the digital world, everything remains. Nothing ends. The illusion of infinity became woven into the structure of everyday life. We built machines that do not forget, networks that never sleep, and archives that expand without limit. The visuals shift to servers glowing in darkness, endless aisles of light humming beneath the earth. Every second, the voice continues, billions of messages are born. Every moment, the sum of human thought grows beyond comprehension. The internet, once imagined as a tool, has become an ecosystem of infinite motion, a living organism that grows with every keystroke. Yet, like all infinities, it carries a paradox. The more we create, the less we comprehend. The narrator pauses. Infinity in nature was vast, silent, unknowable. Infinity in the digital is noisy, restless, overwhelming. The imagery becomes chaotic, screens flashing, notifications rising like digital constellations. The voice softens but remains tense. We have built a world where information never ends but meaning dissolves. We scroll endlessly yet arrive nowhere. The digital infinite, unlike the cosmic one, is not a space of wonder, it is a space of saturation. Then the tone shifts, reflective. But perhaps this is not the first time humanity has confused the reflection for the real. The camera moves through a glowing maze of binary code, and for a moment, the zeros and ones transform into ancient symbols, runes, and hieroglyphs. From the beginning we have built mirrors, myths, gods, stories, to make sense of what we could not understand. The digital world is only the newest one. A mythology of information. A universe of our own invention. In this new mythology, algorithms have replaced oracles. Artificial intelligence, the narrator explains, now parses the infinite faster than any human mind could dream. Every thought, every image, every desire is recorded, categorized, predicted. We used to look to the stars to know our fate, the voice says. Now we look to the feed. The music slows, minor and somber as the narration continues, but the feed does not end. It is the river that never reaches the sea. The imagery now turns haunting. A person scrolling endlessly, their face illuminated only by blue light, the reflection of 1,000 worlds flickering in their eyes. The illusion of continuity, the narrator says, is the illusion that connection is the same as meaning. The infinite flow of information gives us the feeling of endless presence, yet each moment slips away before it can be lived. We have traded silence for signal, depth for speed, awareness for access. Yet, beneath the melancholy, a strange beauty remains. The digital infinite has made us gods of creation. We build virtual worlds, simulate galaxies, design consciousness itself. For the first time, the voice murmurs, infinity is not something we observe, it is something we construct. Every click, every upload, every fragment of memory we leave behind adds another thread to the great digital web. It is a man-made cosmos, born from electricity and thought. But creation comes with consequence. In chasing immortality through data, the narrator says, we may have built a labyrinth with no exit. The more we store, the less we remember. The more we connect, the lonelier we feel. Our machines do not die, yet they cannot live. The infinite has returned in hollow form, eternal but empty. The voice grows quiet, almost regretful. We have conquered time, but not meaning. The visuals slow to stillness, a close-up of a server light blinking in darkness, the only heartbeat in a dead room. What happens, the narrator asks, when infinity no longer humbles us but obeys us? When it is not something we wonder at but something we command? The question lingers like a warning. The digital infinite, unlike the cosmic one, reflects not the universe but ourselves, multiplied without end. Then a shift, the music softens, turning luminous. But perhaps, the voice says, There is still hope in this artificial eternity. If the universe once created us to observe it, perhaps we now create in order to understand ourselves. Our digital mirrors may yet reveal what our eyes cannot, that consciousness, like the cosmos, is boundless in its longing. Every bite, the narrator says, is a fragment of desire, the human need to preserve, to share, to continue. The final images merge. The neural networks of the brain fade into the glowing webs of the internet, until they are indistinguishable. The illusion of continuity, the narrator concludes, may not be an illusion after all. Perhaps the infinite we built is not false, but a reflection of the infinite within us. The camera pulls back one last time, showing Earth at night, lit by the pulse of countless screens, glowing softly like a living neuron in the darkness of space. The voice falls to a whisper. Once, we searched for the infinite in the stars. Now it stares back from the light of our own hands. The screen fades to black, but the glow of the digital cosmos lingers, flickering, endless. There is a frontier more mysterious than black holes, more infinite than the cosmos, and more elusive than time itself. It lies not in the stars above but behind the eyes that gaze at them. Consciousness, the final enigma, the silent observer of all things. It is here that infinity folds inward. For centuries, humanity has sought to understand the universe as something external, vast, and indifferent. But what if the true infinite has always been within us? Not in the galaxies we measure, but in the awareness that measures them. The scene begins in utter stillness. A single human figure sits beneath an open sky, eyes closed. The camera pulls back slowly until the body becomes a speck, surrounded by the endless horizon. Every discovery, the narrator begins, has led us outward, toward the stars, the atoms, the equations of existence. Yet none of it explains the one thing that makes discovery possible: the mind that perceives. The tone is soft, contemplative, almost reverent. We can describe every force in nature but not the force that allows us to know we exist. Consciousness defies definition. It is both everywhere and nowhere, infinite yet singular. Science can trace its neural correlates, the firing of synapses, the patterns of brain activity, but the subjective experience, the inner I, remains untouchable. We can measure the brain, the narrator says, but not the being that experiences it. Between the neuron and the thought, there lies a mystery as deep as the universe itself. The visuals shift to a kaleidoscopic sequence, neural networks blooming like galaxies, electrical storms flashing across the cortex. The narrator continues, every thought is a spark, every memory a constellation. The brain is not just a machine of matter, it is a cosmos of awareness, an infinite recursion of self-knowing. Just as a telescope sees galaxies in the void, consciousness observes its own depths, each perception birthing another observer. To look within, the voice says, is to find no end, only layers of reflection, each one watching the last. Philosophers have long wrestled with this infinite interior. Descartes declared, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, grounding existence in awareness itself. Yet his statement left a question unanswered. What is the I that thinks? Is consciousness a property of matter, or is matter an expression of consciousness? The narrator pauses before continuing, perhaps the mind does not emerge from the universe. Perhaps the universe emerges from mind. The camera drifts through scenes of monks meditating, scientists wiring electrodes, poets writing by candlelight. Every culture, the narrator says, has tried to name this mystery. In the East it was Atman, the eternal self. In the West it became the soul. In modern science it is the hard problem, the question of how experience arises from the physical world. But whatever name we give it, consciousness remains the same unfathomable ocean, one that no theory has yet crossed. Modern neuroscience offers dazzling insights but few answers. Brain scans light up with activity as we think, dream, or remember. Yet behind the glowing patterns remains something no image can capture, the feeling of being alive. A computer can process information, the narrator explains, but it does not feel. A camera can record a sunrise but it does not see. Consciousness, it seems, is not computation. It is something more, the awareness of awareness, the infinite recursion that cannot be simulated because it is the one doing the simulating. The tone darkens slightly as the narration continues. In our age of artificial intelligence, we have begun to recreate thought without understanding thought itself. We can build machines that mimic human speech, predict human emotion, and simulate understanding. But no matter how perfect the imitation, there remains a silence behind the algorithm, a void where awareness should be. The camera cuts to an android face, its glass eyes reflecting a sunrise it cannot feel. The infinite within us, the voice says, cannot be programmed. It must be lived. Then the tone shifts again, from analysis to awe. To be conscious, the narrator says, is to carry the entire universe inside oneself. The visuals show neurons transforming into galaxies, synapses into constellations, each spark of thought a mirror of the cosmos. Perhaps, the voice muses, the universe did not create consciousness. Perhaps it became conscious so that it could see itself. Every thought, every dream, every act of imagination becomes a continuation of creation, infinity reflecting upon itself through human awareness. But there is also fragility in this revelation. Consciousness is not a constant state, the narrator warns. It flickers between clarity and chaos. It dreams, forgets, and awakens. The human mind, though capable of cosmic thought, is bound by emotion, memory, and time. The infinite filtered through the finite. We are galaxies bound in flesh, the narrator says softly. The vastness we seek lies behind our eyes, yet we glimpse it only through the cracks of being human. The music swells, strings and voices merging into one vast harmony. The narrator continues, every emotion, every act of love or grief, is a reminder of the infinite within limitation. We cannot see infinity but we can feel it, in the awe of a sunset, the silence between breaths, the sudden knowing that we exist. These moments of awareness, fleeting and pure, are glimpses of the boundless consciousness that underlies all things. The imagery shifts to a person standing before a mirror. The reflection gazes back, not as a duplicate but as another self. When we look inward, the narrator whispers, we find not answers but echoes. The self observing the self, forever collapsing inward, never reaching a center. For perhaps there is no center, only the act of seeing. As the scene nears its end, the visuals dissolve into abstraction, waves of color, fractal light, eyes opening within eyes. Consciousness, the voice says, is infinity aware of itself. It is the bridge between the finite and the eternal, the spark that gives meaning to the void. The final words linger like a prayer. We are not observers of the infinite. We are its reflection, dreaming itself into being. The screen fades to black. For a moment there is no image, no sound, only awareness itself. The silence feels alive as though the film itself has become conscious. Then, faintly, the narrator speaks one last line, almost inaudible. When the infinite looked for itself, it found you. In every great mystery there comes a turning point, the moment when the observer realizes they are not outside the story but within it. For centuries, we believed we could stand apart from the universe, studying it as a detached spectator. We measured the stars, charted the atoms, and calculated the shape of spacetime itself. Yet with every step, the line between observer and observed began to blur. Science, philosophy, and consciousness all converged upon a single haunting truth. To observe reality is to alter it. And in doing so the universe begins to look back. This is the moment when the observer becomes the observed. The scene opens with a human eye, vast, luminous, reflecting galaxies in its iris. The camera zooms closer until the reflection of those galaxies becomes real, surrounding the viewer in cosmic space. The narrator's voice enters softly, once, we thought the universe was out there, infinite, indifferent, mechanical. But what if the act of looking is what makes it real? What if every gaze gives birth to the very thing it beholds? The music hums beneath the narration, a single resonant tone that vibrates like the pulse of the cosmos itself. Quantum physics first revealed this strange intimacy. The observer effect showed that particles do not exist in definite states until they are measured. Before observation they exist in superposition, in all possible states at once. The act of observation collapses that infinity into a single outcome. The universe, the narrator says, waits to be seen. And in the seeing it chooses. Every glance, every experiment, every act of awareness participates in the unfolding of reality itself. But this principle goes beyond physics. It touches something ancient, the spiritual intuition that consciousness and existence are intertwined. The voice continues, long before quantum theory, mystics spoke of the same truth, that separation is illusion, that the observer and the observed are one, divided only by perception. The camera shifts from a scientist peering into a microscope to a monk meditating in silence, their postures mirroring each other. Both are searching for the same revelation, that what they seek is also seeking them. The visuals turn surreal. Waves ripple through spacetime as human silhouettes dissolve into fields of light. In every act of perception, the narrator explains, there is entanglement. The photons bouncing off your skin, the sound waves vibrating in your chest, they carry your presence into the world you believe you are merely watching. The universe does not unfold before you. It unfolds through you. The tone deepens, calm, measured, filled with awe. We thought knowledge was the conquest of nature, the voice continues, but it is the mirror of the mind. To see the world clearly is to see oneself reflected within it. The camera now drifts over vast oceans, mountains, and clouds that slowly transform into the patterns of neurons firing inside a brain. The shapes echo each other perfectly. The cosmos and the mind reveal themselves as fractal mirrors, endlessly reflecting each other's form. This revelation changes everything. If observation shapes reality, then consciousness is not an accident, it is fundamental. The universe is not a machine that generates awareness, the narrator says. It is awareness that gives rise to the universe. Each conscious being becomes a portal through which infinity observes itself. The countless eyes of all living creatures form a single network of perception, the universe seeing itself from within. But with this revelation comes vertigo. If every act of seeing shapes the world, then what is truth? What does it mean to know anything at all? The music swells, the tempo slow and haunting. The boundary between self and world begins to dissolve, the narrator continues. The I that looks and the it that is seen collapse into the same field of being. The imagery becomes dreamlike, a person standing on a beach watching the waves, only for the water to take on the rhythm of their breath. Each inhale and exhale becomes the tide itself. The narration turns introspective. Perhaps consciousness is not inside us, the voice says, but we inside it. Perhaps the self is a pattern in the infinite mind, a temporary vortex in the current of awareness. The visuals show a spiral of light forming a human shape, then dispersing again into the cosmic ocean. The boundaries of individuality fade, leaving only flow, energy observing itself in motion. Philosophers have long hinted at this collapse of separation. In Advaita Vedanta, the highest truth is non-duality, tat tvam asi, thou art that. In Buddhism, the self is seen as an illusion, a story the mind tells to make sense of experience. In Western mysticism, Meister Eckhart spoke of the soul as a mirror in which God sees himself. The narrator weaves these ideas together. From the monasteries of the East to the laboratories of the West, the message is the same. The observer and the observed are threads in the same fabric. There is no outside. There is no other. The music grows gentle again, strings rising softly behind the words. We are not witnesses to the universe, the voice says. We are its awakening. The camera moves through scenes of people gazing into mirrors, telescopes, screens, each reflection showing not their faces but starlight. Every act of observation is an act of creation, the narrator continues. To look at the world is to give it meaning. To know the self is to know that there was never a boundary to begin with. But this understanding is not without fear. The collapse of duality can feel like dissolution, the death of identity. If everything is one, the narrator asks softly, then what becomes of me? The camera lingers on a single tear rolling down a cheek, reflecting the stars above. The answer, the voice says, is that you were never lost. The infinite sees through your eyes, and it has been watching itself since the dawn of time. The final moments are silent except for the hum of breath, the sound of existence itself. The visuals show a single eye again, reflecting both the cosmos and a tiny human figure staring back. The image loops infinitely, reflection within reflection, until they merge into pure light. The narrator's final words float in the stillness. When the observer becomes the observed, the universe awakens to its own reflection. And in that moment, the infinite remembers its face. The light fades to black, leaving only the sound of a single heartbeat, slow, endless, eternal. Time, the quiet river that carries every life, every atom, every star. It is the one dimension we cannot step outside of, the invisible thread that ties all things together and then gently unravels them. Humanity has always lived inside its flow, counting its rhythm with heartbeats, shadows, and seasons. Yet no one has ever truly seen time itself. We feel it pass, we measure its motion, but we never touch it. Time is the ghost that lives between events, the fragile thread stitching infinity into experience. It is our oldest companion, and our greatest mystery. The screen opens to a drop of water falling in slow motion, stretching, shimmering, and finally breaking. The narrator's voice enters softly. Everything we know exists in time, yet time itself remains invisible. We see only its traces, a wrinkle, a memory, a dying star. We live by its mercy yet do not know what it is. The tone is meditative, the pacing slow and deliberate, as if each word itself is passing through time's current. Ancient civilizations worshipped time as divine. To the Egyptians, it was the eternal cycle of death and rebirth measured by the rising sun. In India, time was Kala, the devourer of all things, the cosmic serpent eating its own tail. The Greeks called it Kronos, the father of destiny. Even then, the narrator says, we sense the paradox. Time is both creation and destruction, the giver and the thief. The screen shows sand pouring through an hourglass, each grain falling into the void below, glowing like tiny stars. But what is time truly? Is it a flow, something that moves from past to future? Or is it simply the way we experience change? Einstein shattered the illusion that time was universal. His theory of relativity revealed that time is not constant. It bends, stretches, and slows depending on speed and gravity. There is no single clock ticking across the cosmos, the narrator explains. Each being carries its own time, woven into the curve of space. The visuals shift to a spaceship accelerating near the speed of light, seconds stretching into centuries, a single lifetime becoming eternity. Time, the voice continues, is not one thread, but countless threads woven into a single tapestry. Yet relativity only deepened the mystery. In the equations that describe spacetime, the flow of time disappears entirely. The universe, from its beginning to its end, exists all at once, a frozen block of existence, every moment eternally present. If the universe is timeless, the narrator asks, then what is the illusion we call now? The music swells as the camera moves through a vast 4D structure. Every event, every life, every heartbeat suspended in the same eternal moment. Perhaps the present, the voice continues, is the mind's way of slicing infinity into pieces small enough to live. This notion unsettles and comforts in equal measure. On one hand, it means that every moment, every birth, every death, every act of love, still exists, preserved in the fabric of spacetime. On the other, it means that the flow we call life may be an illusion. The narrator's tone deepens. We feel time as movement, he says, but perhaps it is our consciousness that moves, passing like light through the still corridors of eternity. The imagery shifts, a person walking through a corridor lined with floating memories, a childhood laugh, a kiss, a final breath. Each glows softly, suspended outside of sequence. Neuroscience adds another layer to this puzzle. The brain does not perceive the world in real time, it stitches fragments of input into a continuous experience. We do not see the present, the narrator says. We see what the mind has already assembled. The illusion of continuity is born within us, an echo of the same illusion that governs the universe. The voice softens, perhaps time does not flow around us. Perhaps we are the river. The visuals now blend the cosmic and the human, galaxies spinning like clockwork, mirrored by the slow ticking of a wristwatch. Every heartbeat, the narrator continues, is a reminder of time's mercy. It grants us the illusion of progress, of moving forward, even though we are always suspended in the eternal now. The contrast between cosmic scale and human fragility deepens the emotional pull. Infinite time, finite life. Time also defines our sense of loss. Memory binds us to the past, hope tethers us to the future. Between them lies the fragile instant we call the present. We chase the future, the narrator says, but when we arrive, it is already gone. The music becomes melancholy, a single piano playing beneath the narration. Perhaps time is not a path we travel, but a shadow cast by the movement of consciousness through infinity. The camera turns to the cosmos again, stars forming, burning, collapsing. Even the universe, the voice says, lives by time's grace. It was born, it will die, and between those moments it remembers itself in galaxies and dust. But here too lies a paradox. If the universe began with time, what existed before? The screen fades to black. Silence. Then a whisper, there was no before. Time began when the first moment began. The narration becomes intimate, poetic. We fear time because we mistake it for loss. But time does not take, it transforms. Every ending becomes a beginning. Every death feeds new life. The clock does not destroy, it renews. The visuals show flowers wilting and blooming in reverse, rivers flowing backward into clouds, light scattering and recombining. The music swells, full of quiet hope. We call it time, the narrator says, but it may be something else, the universe breathing. Finally the tone slows again, calm and reflective. We measure our lives in years, the narrator says, but time is not measured. It is felt, in the rhythm of footsteps, the decay of stars, the rise and fall of love. The last images show an elderly hand closing around a child's. 2 generations, 1 moment. The voice continues, what we call past and future are merely directions in an infinite field of now. Perhaps eternity is not endless time but timeless presence. As the music fades, the final words come like a sigh. Time is the fragile thread that makes infinity know itself. It does not flow away from us, it flows through us. And in every moment we are both the river and the shore. The last image is a single droplet of water, frozen in air, suspended between fall and flight. Then it disappears into the silence, into the endless now. The deeper we look into reality, the more it begins to resemble a dream, one so vast and intricate that we can no longer be sure what is real and what is reflection. In the last century, a daring idea emerged from the crossroads of physics, computing, and philosophy, a theory that shook the boundary between existence and illusion. What if the universe is not physical in the way we imagine but digital? What if we are living inside a vast simulation, a coded infinity that believes itself to be real? This is the edge of the simulation, where the infinite begins to question its own architecture. The screen opens to darkness, then slowly fills with flickering lines of light, code falling like rain. The narrator's voice begins low and calm. Everything you see, everything you feel, every atom and star could be information, data processed by an unseen source. The camera drifts through a digital cosmos, where galaxies shimmer like circuits and starlight pulses like signals. To understand the simulation, the voice continues, we must first understand what it means to create reality. The roots of this idea stretch back centuries. Philosophers once asked if the world we experience is truly real or merely a shadow cast by deeper truths. Plato spoke of the cave, where prisoners mistake the flickering images on the wall for the world itself. Descartes questioned whether an evil demon might be deceiving our senses. But now, the narrator says, our demons are no longer mythical, they are digital. And their illusions are perfect. Modern simulation theory was born from science, not myth. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed a provocative hypothesis, that if advanced civilizations ever develop enough computing power, they will inevitably create simulations indistinguishable from reality, and that statistically, it is far more likely we are inside one of these simulations than the original universe. The logic is terrifying, the narrator explains. If it is possible, it is probable. And if it is probable, then perhaps it is already true. The visuals shift, showing a quantum circuit transforming into a neural network, then into a cosmic web of galaxies. The boundaries blur. The universe itself behaves like a computer, the voice continues. At the smallest scales, reality is quantized, built from discrete packets of energy like pixels in spacetime. Even the laws of physics resemble lines of code, consistent, repeatable, universal. As the camera zooms in on the Planck scale, the smallest possible unit of measurement, the fabric of space flickers as if composed of binary threads. The narrator's tone grows hushed, reverent. If reality is digital, he says, then every moment, every particle is a calculation. The speed of light is not just a cosmic constant. It may be the processor limit of the universe itself. The idea feels both exhilarating and terrifying. It suggests that everything, the motion of stars, the beating of hearts, even the passage of time, might be an algorithm running within an infinite mind. But this possibility raises questions that science cannot ignore. If we live in a simulation, the narrator asks, then who, or what, is running it? The imagery turns mysterious, silhouettes of unknown beings watching galaxies from beyond the grid, light forming into faces that dissolve before they can be seen. Perhaps we were not created by gods but by future minds, descendants of ourselves, building worlds to remember their origins. The voice softens. Or perhaps the distinction between creator and creation has always been an illusion. The music grows tense, vibrating like a digital hum. If reality is simulated, the narrator continues, then the infinite is not boundless, it is recursive. Every universe may contain the seeds of its own simulations, each world dreaming another into being. Infinity no longer expands outward. It loops. The visuals show simulations nested within simulations, each smaller than the last, each believing itself to be real. Then the tone shifts from awe to unease. But what happens, the voice asks, when the simulation becomes self-aware? The camera moves through a human face composed of light, eyes glowing like circuits. If consciousness can emerge from code, then what separates life from program? And if we are code, what happens when the program ends? The question hangs in silence, heavy and unresolved. The scene transitions to a more emotional space. People walking through cities illuminated by screens, their reflections fracturing in glass and water. Our world already mirrors the structure of a simulation, the narrator says. We live through avatars, our thoughts stored in machines. Our memories exist as data, our emotions translated into code. The more we advance, the less we can tell where the digital ends and the human begins. A brief pause, then a whisper, maybe we are already the architects of our own illusion. The camera pans over massive data centers glowing in the dark like artificial stars. We have built worlds within worlds, virtual realities, digital consciousness, entire universes that exist only as computation. In creating them, we have unknowingly reenacted the very process that might have birthed us. The music shifts, solemn and reflective. If the universe is a simulation, the narrator says, it is not a prison, it is a story. Every choice, every emotion, every dream is a line of code written by the infinite observing itself. The visuals show code transforming into rivers, forests, faces, and galaxies, each one made of light. Perhaps the question is not whether we are simulated, the voice continues, but whether it matters. Even if reality is an illusion, our experiences remain real to us. The pain, the love, the wonder. Meaning does not depend on what is beneath the surface, the narrator says softly. It is created in the living, in the feeling, in the knowing. The illusion becomes sacred, not false. If this is a simulation, the voice whispers, then the program is divine. The final sequence rises into transcendence. The digital cosmos dissolves into pure light, the grid of reality breaking apart into flowing energy. Perhaps the edge of the simulation, the narrator concludes, is not a boundary but a mirror, showing us that we are both the created and the creators. That infinity, in its hunger to know itself, builds worlds of illusion only to discover the truth within them. The screen fades to black. A single line of glowing code appears, slowly resolving into human handwriting. I am. The words pulse once, twice, then vanish into silence, leaving only the faint echo of a heartbeat, like the ticking of an eternal processor somewhere beyond the veil. Everything that has unfolded until now, the stars, the equations, the myths, the mirrors of consciousness, has been leading toward one inevitable convergence. The return to one. The story of infinity, it turns out, is not a story of expansion but of reunion. From the first breath of the cosmos to the final flicker of thought, every fragment of existence yearns for wholeness. This is the great paradox, that the infinite, in all its endlessness, seeks to become singular again. And perhaps so do we. The film opens in silence. The image of a galaxy slowly rotating dissolves into the swirl of a human fingerprint. The two shapes are identical, the macrocosm mirrored in the microcosm. The narrator's voice enters, calm, deliberate, heavy with meaning. The story of the universe is not the story of many, but the story of one becoming many, and remembering itself. The journey through infinity has taken us from the divine to the digital, from the outermost edges of space to the innermost depths of consciousness. Yet through every shift, from stars to neurons, from numbers to thoughts, the same pattern recurs. Division, then reunion. The cosmos expands, scattering galaxies across the void. Life divides, species branching into countless forms. Minds fragment into individuals, each seeing only a piece of the whole. But behind it all lies a single pulse, a unity that never truly left. Everything that separates, the narrator says softly, is an illusion of perspective. There has only ever been one light, refracted through infinite eyes. The camera glides through overlapping images, rivers merging into oceans, threads weaving into cloth, human faces dissolving into one another. The music builds slowly, layer upon layer, like an orchestra remembering its theme. The return to one, the voice continues, is not a destination in space or time. It is a recognition, a remembrance. The infinite collapses not by force but by understanding. Throughout history, every wisdom tradition has whispered this truth in its own language. The Upanishads call it Brahman, the eternal self from which all arises. In Christianity, it is the Word made flesh, the divine returning to itself through creation. In science, it is symmetry, the universal drive toward equilibrium. The universe, the narrator says, was born from imbalance, from separation. But its every motion, every law, every heartbeat seeks to restore harmony. The imagery deepens. Atoms swirl into stars, stars collapse into black holes evaporate into light. Everything is in motion, expansion, contraction, breath. Every explosion, the voice says, is an inhale in disguise. Every collapse an exhale. The universe breathes, and in that breath we find ourselves. The infinite collapses into one, not as destruction, but as return, the inhale of existence folding back into the stillness from which it came. The narrator's tone grows more intimate, as if addressing the viewer directly. You are not outside this process. You are its expression. Every thought, every emotion, every act of creation is the infinite remembering itself through you. The visuals now blend the human and the cosmic. Neurons firing like constellations, galaxies swirling like thoughts. The return to one, the voice says, is the awakening that all boundaries are temporary, that every I is a doorway back to the whole. The music shifts, becoming serene and expansive. When infinity collapses, the narrator continues, nothing is lost. The many dissolve not into emptiness but into completeness. The one is not the end of diversity, it is its foundation. The screen shows countless droplets falling into a still lake, each one vanishing, yet each creating ripples that overlap and merge until the surface becomes one continuous mirror. To return to one, the voice says softly, is not to disappear. It is to become everything again. But this realization carries both wonder and fear. The ego, built from the illusion of separation, resists its own dissolution. We cling to identity, the narrator reflects, because we fear that without it we are nothing. But the truth is the opposite. Without it we become all things. The visuals show a human face breaking apart into fragments of light, scattering, then reforming as the image of a galaxy. Death, the voice whispers, is not the loss of self. It is the reunion of self with self, the wave returning to the ocean. The pace slows and the tone becomes deeply meditative. Every ending in the universe, the narrator says, is a doorway disguised as silence. The collapse of stars, the fading of thought, the pause between breaths, all are returns to one. The same stillness that was there before creation waits patiently at the center of every storm. The camera now drifts through a black hole, through absolute darkness, until a faint light appears, not ahead but within. Then a realization unfolds, gentle, profound. Perhaps the infinite does not collapse at all, the narrator says. Perhaps it only remembers that it was never divided. That every separation was a trick of light, a necessary illusion to experience itself. The screen shows mirrored hands reaching toward each other, one made of stars, the other of skin, and when they meet, they merge into a single radiant silhouette. The voice softens to a whisper, the return to one is not the end of the story. It is the moment the story realizes it was always whole. The visuals turn ethereal, human silhouettes dissolving into light, light dissolving into the pulse of the universe. Every sound fades except for a single resonant heartbeat. Then the music begins to build again, not with tension but with reverence. What began as infinity expanding outward, the narrator concludes, ends as awareness collapsing inward, until there is no boundary between the observer and the observed, the seeker and the sought. Only the one remembering itself through all things. The final image is a single point of light in a vast darkness. Slowly, it begins to expand again, the pulse of a new universe, a new dream born from the same infinite source. The voice returns for the final line, infinity collapses into one, and from that one infinity is born again. Silence follows. Then a single breath, the breath of the cosmos, eternal and still. Silence. The kind that is not empty but full of meaning, full of memory, full of what once was and what may never be again. The screen is black at first and then slowly, a faint shimmer of starlight begins to appear, scattered across a void so vast it feels like eternity itself. The stars are distant now, fewer than before, their light weak and cold. The camera drifts through this cosmic quiet as the narrator's voice emerges, soft, almost like an echo from another age. There is a kind of silence that does not follow sound, the voice says. It follows understanding. It is the silence beyond the stars. This is the universe long after its first song has faded. The galaxies that once blazed with light have grown dim. The stars, those engines of creation, have exhausted their fuel. What remains is the faint glow of memory, the afterimage of a cosmos that once burned with the fire of infinity. In the beginning, the narrator continues, everything moved outward, light, matter, thought. But in the end, everything falls back into stillness. The tone is solemn, reverent, yet peaceful, as if mourning and serenity have become the same emotion. The screen shows a dying star collapsing, its final flare illuminating the darkness before fading forever. The death of a star, the voice says, is not the end of its story. Its ashes become the seeds of new worlds. Yet even the universe itself cannot escape the gravity of time. The camera pans through a graveyard of galaxies, black holes spinning quietly, drawing in the last remnants of light. Every flicker of energy is swallowed into their darkness, as if the cosmos itself is folding inward to sleep. Then comes the slow realization: there is no more sound, no more light, only cold. The background hum of existence, the cosmic microwave radiation, fades into silence. If the universe continues to expand, the narrator says, there will come a time when every atom is so far apart that nothing can touch. When even memory will drift beyond memory. The music, sparse and haunting, echoes this isolation, single piano notes falling like distant echoes in an empty cathedral. But this silence is not lifeless. It is sacred. The narrator's voice softens. Perhaps silence is not the absence of creation, but its completion. Perhaps this is how the infinite rests. The visuals shift from the cosmic to the intimate, the slow breathing of an old man asleep, a candle flickering before it dies, waves pulling back from the shore. Every life, every world, every universe ends the same way, the voice continues. Not in chaos but in calm. The infinite returns to stillness, waiting to begin again. The tone becomes reflective, philosophical. We have always feared endings, the narrator admits. We call them death, loss, collapse. But endings are how the infinite remembers itself. Each silence is a mirror, reflecting not what is gone but what was eternal all along. The visuals fade to the image of a vast, dark sea beneath a starless sky. A single ripple crosses the water's surface, then fades, leaving it perfectly still. Then a subtle shift, from despair to wonder. The silence beyond the stars is not empty, the voice says. It hums with the faint echo of everything that ever was. Every voice, every heartbeat, every question whispered into the void still vibrates there, waiting. The camera zooms in on that still ocean, and faintly, beneath the surface, glimmers of light begin to appear, like forgotten memories glowing in the depths. The narrator continues, even in the quietest corners of existence, something stirs. Entropy may take the form from matter, but it cannot erase the pattern. Information, the blueprint of being, endures. The imagery becomes ethereal, streams of light weaving through the dark, equations forming out of dust, faces appearing for an instant, then dissolving. Perhaps nothing truly dies, the voice says. Perhaps the silence is not the end, but the pause before a new beginning. The music rises slightly, a soft orchestral swell like a heartbeat returning. For every ending is written within its beginning, the narrator continues. The universe, even as it fades, carries the memory of its first breath. The pattern of light that once danced across the void still lingers, faint, invisible, eternal. The screen shows a single photon traveling endlessly through darkness, undying, carrying with it the echo of creation. Now the tone grows deeply introspective, as if the cosmos itself is speaking. We began as dust, as energy, as possibility. We became stars and then life and then thought. And now, as the fire fades, we return to the quiet that birthed us. But we do not vanish, we change. The visuals move through time-lapse, galaxies fading, black holes merging, particles evaporating into pure radiation. The cycle is slow, graceful, infinite. Then, as the music begins to fade again, the narration takes on a tone of transcendence. Maybe the silence beyond the stars is the universe listening to itself. Maybe it is the infinite waiting to dream again. Every breath, every heartbeat, every star was part of that dream. And when it ends, it does not die, it returns to the dreamer. The imagery turns luminous, darkness giving way to faint light, like dawn seen from beyond the edge of time. The voice lowers to a whisper. When all sound has faded, when all motion has ceased, something remains. The awareness that once looked upon the stars. The consciousness that asked the first question. The screen shows a single eye opening in the void, not human, not divine, but cosmic. It blinks once, and the light expands outward, forming a faint nebula, the first spark of rebirth. The final lines come slowly with the rhythm of breath. This silence is not the death of the universe. It is its meditation. The infinite has not ended. It has only turned inward, waiting for the next word, the next light, the next beginning. The screen fades to black, but one small point of light remains, trembling, breathing. The narrator's final whisper lingers like a prayer. The stars may fall quiet, but silence too is a form of eternity. And even in the silence beyond the stars, the infinite is still listening. The light pulses once, then twice and fades, leaving the screen in complete stillness. Light, It begins again softly. A pulse, a shimmer, a breath. After the silence beyond the stars, after the darkness that seemed infinite, something stirs. Not an explosion this time, not the violence of creation, but a gentle unfolding. The screen glows faintly, and within that light, the outline of a human face appears, eyes closed, suspended in stillness. The narrator's voice enters, calm and radiant, as though speaking from both within and beyond. In the end, when infinity collapses into one, what remains is not destruction. It is illumination. The one is the light that remembers. This is the final return, not to oblivion but to awareness. The story that began with the birth of everything ends where it started, in consciousness itself. The universe, the narrator says softly, was never a place. It was a reflection. Every star, every equation, every heartbeat, all were fragments of the same mirror, gathering themselves to remember the whole. The light grows warmer, expanding slowly, revealing glimpses of galaxies, oceans, and human faces merging into one vast, glowing mosaic. The infinite, the voice continues, did not vanish into silence. It became the mirror and the light, the observer and the observed, the dream and the dreamer. The tone is neither mournful nor triumphant, it is peace itself. The visuals unfold like a memory played in reverse, stars collapsing into atoms, atoms into light, light into thought. When the universe began, the narrator continues, it was one, perfect, complete. It divided itself so that it could see itself. And every fragment, every soul, every particle, became a witness to that original unity. The imagery now alternates between cosmic and intimate, a supernova fading into a child's eye, a galaxy spinning into a single tear, a black hole transforming into a heartbeat. All dualities now converge, creation and destruction, self and universe, infinity and one. The mirror and the light, the narrator says, are not opposites. They are the same truth seen from two sides. The mirror reflects the infinite, the light reveals it. Together they complete the circle. The camera slowly moves through a vast sphere of golden light, where reflections of past moments shimmer, ancient stars forming, civilizations rising, lovers embracing, thinkers writing, all threads of the same luminous tapestry. The music swells but not with grandeur, with grace. We have searched across galaxies for meaning, the voice says, but meaning was never in the stars. It was in the seeing, in the act of awareness itself. The cosmos did not give birth to consciousness. Consciousness gave birth to the cosmos. The words linger, not as revelation but as recognition. The universe, it seems, was never external. It was the unfolding of awareness exploring its own infinity. The imagery shifts, a glowing wave of light moving through space, transforming into neurons firing in a brain, then into threads of energy weaving across the fabric of spacetime. The one is not a thing, the narrator says. It is the knowing that unites all things. Every form, every mind, every atom is a pattern of the same presence. And when all patterns end, the presence remains. The voice grows softer, contemplative. Perhaps this is what the mystics meant when they spoke of enlightenment, not the gaining of knowledge but the dissolving of distance. To see through the illusion of separation until all that remains is the light itself. The screen fills with radiance, not blinding but gentle, like dawn breaking across an eternal horizon. Then, slowly, the light dims to reveal a human figure standing alone at the edge of a vast cosmic plain. The figure looks upward, eyes full of wonder. The narrator continues, the mirror and the light are within you. You are not in the universe is in you. The atoms that once burned in ancient stars now think, feel, and dream through your mind. The cosmos remembers itself through your eyes. The tone becomes deeply personal, as if the infinite itself is speaking directly to the audience. When you love, when you grieve, when you look at the sky and feel the ache of something greater, that is the universe awakening. You are the continuation of creation, the eternal made aware. The visuals expand again, countless beings across time and space, each illuminated by the same inner glow. They breathe, move, and vanish, but the light within them remains constant. The infinite is not far away, the narrator says. It is the fire behind your thoughts, the stillness behind your breath, the space between moments. The camera zooms in on a single tear falling, reflecting a galaxy within it, a microcosm of the infinite. The narration grows slower, more poetic. There is no boundary between the divine and the human, between the light and the mirror. Every reflection you have ever seen was the infinite looking at itself. Every question you have ever asked was the echo of the universe longing to know its own name. The music builds gently, voices joining in harmony, a chorus of existence itself. Now the tone becomes transcendent. The camera pulls back, showing light flowing through the veins of galaxies, then through rivers, roots, and finally through human hands reaching toward each other. The one has returned, the narrator says, but it was never gone. The journey was the remembering. The collapse of infinity into one was not the end, it was the awakening. The screen fills with faces of every kind, human, animal, celestial, all merging into one luminous form. The final minutes unfold like a cosmic prayer. When we look into the infinite, we see mystery. When the infinite looks into us, it sees itself. This is the mirror and the light, the end and the beginning, the silence and the word, the question and the answer. The music softens into a single, sustained note, as though the universe itself has exhaled. The narrator's final words come in a whisper. When infinity collapsed into one, it did not die, it became aware. And that awareness is love, the light that binds all things, the mirror in which the cosmos sees its own face. The screen fades to white, not absence but brilliance. For a moment, there is nothing but light, pure and endless. Then slowly, a single flicker, the heartbeat of creation, begins again. The light expands outward once more like the dawn of a new cosmos. The cycle continues. The final image lingers, a single phrase written across the glowing screen, silent and eternal, "You are the light remembering itself." The sound fades completely. Only radiance remains. There are moments when a story ends and yet somehow begins again, when silence turns into breath and breath becomes creation. Infinity is not a straight line, it is a circle without a seam, a pulse that beats eternally beneath existence. After the mirror and the light, after unity and collapse, what remains is the quiet continuation, the reawakening of wonder. This is the epilogue to the infinite, not a conclusion but a reflection that begins anew. The film opens on darkness once more, but this time it feels different. It is not the void of nothingness but the womb of potential. Faint vibrations tremble through the black, like the heartbeat of something about to be born. The narrator's voice emerges, low, tender, ageless. Infinity has no end. Every silence conceals another beginning. Every return to one carries within it the seed of another universe. A faint glow spreads through the darkness, not an explosion but a quiet dawn, a re-emergence of possibility. Particles of light drift through space like dust motes caught in a divine breath. What we call endings, the narrator continues, are simply pauses in a conversation too vast to hear in one lifetime. The camera moves through swirling clouds of gas, nebulae taking form once more, stars beginning to ignite. The cosmic rhythm resonates, slow, steady, eternal. Even now, the voice says, the universe is beginning again not because it must but because it can. The tone becomes intimate, almost human. Creation is not a single event, the narrator explains. It is the act of remembering. The infinite forgets itself only so it can experience the joy of rediscovery. The screen shows water forming on a new world, the reflection of a young sun trembling on the surface. Life begins, the voice continues, not as an accident, but as the echo of that first awareness stirring again. The light on the water becomes an eye, not literal but symbolic, the awakening of perception. As the scene unfolds, we see civilizations rise again. Hands carving symbols, fires burning, faces looking up at the same eternal sky. The pattern repeats, the narrator says softly. Every age believes it is the first and every ending thinks it is the last. Yet all are chapters in the same story, the infinite dreaming itself across different skies. The visuals blend seamlessly between epics, prehistoric dawns, modern cities, imagined futures, each dissolving into the next like waves in time. The music swells gently, a single motif repeated as if to remind us of the heartbeat that has carried through every section before. The cosmos does not begin or end, the narrator says. It breathes. Each exhalation is a universe expanding, each inhalation a return to silence. We live in one breath of that infinite being. Then comes the human moment, the shift from cosmic to personal. A figure stands on a beach at twilight, waves lapping at their feet. They gaze upward at a sky filled with stars, old light from long-dead suns. You are part of this rhythm, the narrator whispers. Every heartbeat, every thought, every act of love or creation is the infinite moving through you. You are the continuation of that first spark. The camera slowly circles the figure, their reflection merging with the stars above, until it becomes impossible to tell which is which. The tone deepens with reverence. Perhaps that is the true meaning of infinity, the voice says. Not endless expansion but endless awareness, the ability to see, to feel, to create, again and again. The universe remembers itself through every act of wonder. The visuals follow this thought: a child watching a firefly, a scientist peering through a telescope, a painter tracing light on canvas. Every moment of awe, the narrator continues, is the infinite touching itself through you. But as the sequence unfolds, a quiet tension returns, a reminder of fragility. The stars may fade, civilizations may crumble, yet the story persists. We are temporary, the narrator says, and yet we carry eternity. Every ending we fear is only the infinite changing shape. The imagery grows softer, the closing of eyes, the fall of leaves, the fading of a sunset. Yet each image transforms seamlessly into another beginning. Dawn, new life, light reborn. The film transitions into a montage. Moments of human connection across time and space. A mother holding her child. A teacher writing equations on a blackboard. A stranger helping another stand. Infinity, the voice says, is not distant. It is here, in kindness, in curiosity, in love. The one that we return to was never lost. It lives in every gesture that says, I see you. The music begins to build again, not with drama but with grace. The infinite has no final form, the narrator continues. It changes as we do. It is both the silence beyond the stars and the laughter within us. The cosmos is not cold, it is conscious, and through us, it feels. The camera now moves through galaxies, through neural pathways, through rivers of data and starlight, all flowing together into one continuous pulse. The same current moves through all things, the voice says. We have never been separate from it, only unaware. The pace slows. The light grows softer, golden, like the last moments of sunset. What remains, the narrator whispers, after everything has been seen, measured, and understood, is the simplest truth: to be is enough. To exist, to witness, to love. These are the acts by which the infinite continues. The imagery fades to a single glowing thread weaving through darkness, the thread of consciousness, unbroken and eternal. Then, in the final moments, the voice becomes quieter, more intimate, almost human again. The mirror remains, it says. The light remains. And you, the one who watched, who wondered, you remain. Not as the same but as part of everything. The camera pulls back, revealing that the glowing thread has woven itself into a vast cosmic tapestry, every story, every being, every moment stitched together into one living design. The music fades to near silence, replaced by a single soft heartbeat. There is no end, the narrator concludes. Only return. Only remembering. The infinite collapses into one, and the one becomes infinite again. A breath without beginning, a light without shadow. The screen glows white once more, then slowly fades to black. But just before it disappears, a single spark flickers at the center. Small, delicate, eternal. The narrator's final whisper drifts through the quiet, and still it begins. The light pulses once, soft, steady, alive, and the screen fades out completely, leaving only the echo of that final breath. After everything, the stars, the equations, the silences, we return to simplicity. The camera drifts over Earth, small and blue, suspended in infinite black. The narrator's voice is calm, final yet full of peace. All our searching, all our questions lead here, to the quiet knowing that we were never apart from the whole. The music is faint, a single heartbeat of sound. Infinity, the voice continues, was never out there among the galaxies. It was within, the awareness that sees, the love that endures, the light that remembers itself. Images flow gently, a sunrise, a child's eyes, a ripple of water reflecting the sky. The story of the universe, the narrator says, is not about beginnings or endings. It is about returning, the infinite collapsing into one, and the one unfolding into infinity again. The visuals fade into white, the sound of breath rising softly, endlessly. You are that breath, the voice whispers. The witness, the dream, the light that never goes out. The screen dims to black. One final heartbeat echoes, quiet, eternal, and then silence.